Hello, my presentation for this year's research topic has been looking at a strategic approach to building a library culture supporting literacy improvement across the school. My name is Annie Madden and I'm the K-6 teacher librarian at St Edward's Primary School, South Tamworth. To start with, I think what's important to note when you're doing working on building the library culture is looking at where you start from. So my motivation for building a library culture in any school is coming directly from my personal vision. I'm a firm believer that literacy is the way in the world. And literacy, in my opinion, in my learnings, is the ability to read, write, speak, and listen in a way that lets us communicate effectively and make sense of the world. And it has been shown through research. Here I have a quote from research in the UK that reading for pleasure is the most important way to advance literacy attainment in children. And from what I have seen from my own children and from being a teacher for many years is that reading for pleasure, the children that do read for pleasure regularly and often and with some enthusiasm are definitely the ones that find school the most, who find school easiest and can achieve in that environment. I also, this quote over here from Neil Gaiman, many teachers have taken me to task for this over the years. They say it implies that explicit teaching for learning strategies and learning skills isn't important. It's not saying that at all. But if you want our children to be readers, you have to allow them to have activity, to have a pleasurable interaction as an activity with reading and with books, and to give them choice, because we all know that when students have choice about what they're doing in any area, but especially including reading, then this empowers them to take ownership of that and develop things in a more genuine way. So our library history at St Edward's, until my arrival last year in 2021, was that there was a teacher on each campus. We're a two-campus school, and they were giving a few hours a week to basically accession the books, replace the books on the shelf, and generally keep the place in some sort of order. That is a very big ask, because to manage a library properly needs far more than just a couple of hours a week. From what I can understand then, classes had set times, but they weren't always accessed. The teachers took them sometimes to borrow, and the teacher managed all the borrowing and returning. As a result, the overdue list was quite huge. The budget for the library was mostly from the book fair credits. So depending on how much was sold at the book fair that year, those credits were accessed through Scholastic. But of course, that is a very limited range of what you can get there for books. The collection from especially the nonfiction was quite old, shabby, overcrowding. And why? Because the ladies who were managing the libraries didn't have very much time, and weeding and getting rid of those older books takes time, and they didn't have the time. Also, our diocesan policy is that an average age of 10 years for our collections, and our collection, the average age was considerably older than 10 years. And students were given little instruction regarding the care of books, where to locate books, love of literature and new authors. And they certainly didn't connect what learning they did have in those areas in their classroom with what was going on in the library. In other words, their view of the library was just somewhere you went to and you absolutely had to go when you were taken there by your teacher. So there were blockers to changing the culture of the library in the school. As with any big change, if the people working at the school had not been exposed to a different way of looking at the library, of course there were queries and questions and possibly misunderstandings about how the library could and should be used in a contemporary school environment. I'll leave that question with you to think for a moment. So I found that the challenges and the blockers to changing the culture and the attitude to the library came from right across the school, from all areas, simply because there was little understanding of what a library has to offer in a curriculum and in a school environment. And why? Because not many of our teachers had seen a full functioning and a full rolling library in its great glory. There were lots of comments from people across the board of, what are you going to do with your time? In other words, you've got a full week in the library. We've not had that before. How are you going to fill up your time? working from our diocesan timetable structure was interesting. We have a 2-hour uninterrupted literacy block. Uninterrupted included coming to the library, which has never sat well with me, and I do not understand how you cannot connect literature and reading for pleasure to our literacy block. That does not make sense, but that was one of the frameworks that I needed to work how to get around. Teachers not valuing their class library time allocation or understanding that reading for pleasure was an important part of reading and literacy development. So if teachers didn't feel there was time, or that reading for pleasure wasn't a priority due to assessing and measuring all the reading components in class, then of course they didn't see a need to bring them to the library on a regular basis to swap their reading for pleasure books. And of course, because students weren't coming to the library, they didn't respect the books, they didn't respect the library place, and for some of the students, they didn't respect me either. I was just the lady who fussed around with the books in the library. Okay, so what were my strategies to changing this mindset at St. Edward's? I had 5 things. I started with 4. The 5th one came a little bit later. But the first one was to get the students into the spaces, in a pleasurable and worthwhile way. The second one was to get the library out there in the minds of everybody, that is advertise. It's just like retail down the street. You put things in front of people, they're far more likely to see it in a positive way and to want what you have to offer. Making the library a pleasant place. It was fairly crowded because not much weeding had been done, because no one was in there regularly. It was sort of dusty and cluttered. The cupboards were all filled up with resources from classes, as the space had been used for classrooms over the time. So that was a priority. And leading the teachers to value the library, so making it clear that your allocated time wasn't optional. You came, you brought the students on time, they returned their books, they had a library bag, all of those kinds of things. So it was sort of building a value and a respect of the library space, I suppose. And then a little bit later in 2022, connecting the library very clearly to supporting the school improvement plan. So what was the library doing to support and grow the improvement plan for the whole school? That's where I started. First of all, getting students into the spaces, availability, we opened up. So now, originally the library was kind of just used at lunchtime for students who wanted to play various games on their computers. That's now stopped. It is open before school, recess and lunch every day. I'm across 2 campuses, so this means primary, it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and at infants, it is open those times on a Thursday and a Friday. We started clubs in our breaks to give students a purpose for coming into the library, and I really lifted the profile of the library leaders, who are our student volunteers who come in to help support, tidy, dust, love the books, and I'll talk about each of these things as we go. First of all, our early bird reading club. So our early bird club only happens before school, and the idea is that students come in and there is nothing else available to do except read and swap your books if need be. So we have at least 10 or 15 a day at primary. Of course, if the weather is really bad, as in hot or cold, there's more students that come in. And if there's an excursion in year 4 and year 4 are really excited, then, they don't tend to come in on those days. Infants, it was a little harder to develop a routine because we're only there on Thursdays and Fridays, and they're forgetful. They're little kids. So we don't tend to have as many come in from infants, but it is still available there. As the weather gets hotter and the year progresses, probably more will start coming in again. I got some, I also really have asked the class teachers to encourage students who need to come in and just read with someone for a few minutes. and we do that as well. So the infants' feedback, this is straight from the students' mouths. I get to up my reading level. I love reading in the mornings. I like stickers. Yes, they get stickers if they come in. Kinders get someone to read to them. And yes, we do have some peer reading going on, and the teachers read to them as well. Myself and our library assistant, Miss Steph, are on duty in the mornings to hear them read. From the primary, why can't you be here every day? We have our avid readers that do not like that we go to infants at the end of the week, but that's just the reality of the situation. Another student, early birds is an opportunity to read in the morning instead of play. It gives people time to just read. I get to read and have exploration of my imagination. I like to have a sticker chart with genres, so you start to read different types of stories. So the idea is with early birds with primary, it's more of a challenge. They're given a chart, and this is on here. You can see we have funny novels, a boy with a boy antagonist, a girl antagonist, action and adventure. There's all different genres. This particular series is from series 1. When they finish that one, as this child has, they move on to series 2. So they love having those sticker charts and setting themselves a challenge. There's heaps of different books to read, lots of books, and a peaceful place. You have no idea how many times in a week students say, I love coming in here because it's peaceful and it's quiet and I can think, or I've got a headache and I don't feel well today. And they just come in to read. There's exciting books, and I help friends to read. My second thing was to get the library out there in front of people. So I make a point of nearly every day, I announce that the library is open and what it's open for, what club is on or whatever. Every opportunity, I get news into newsletters and into the social media. Mrs. Ashford is our social media guru, and she is wonderful at supporting me. If someone asks me to be a guest speaker, I'm there. So I go to playgroup, kinder readiness meetings and parent reading workshops. I'm there saying what the library has to offer, and definitely spruiking about what reading for pleasure, how that helps develop a child's literacy. The book fair is highly advertised, and so many people come to that. It's a wonderful thing. Book week and book character parade, and then we've introduced other events like Talk Like a Pirate Day. Teachers come as fairy days, and I change the displays out the front of the library where possible, and even a sign to say when we're open, because the kids were getting confused about what days we're open on what campus. We share student success, of course. So here we are. These are our library leaders, memos, newsletters, assemblies, Facebook, it's all shared. Connecting with parents at expos and things like that. Parents are always happy to hear about how they can help their child get ready for school, or what they can do to develop their readiness. And they're very eager to hear. Our 1,000 Books Before School project has been a huge project, and that is where students enrolled for kindergarten the following year can come in and borrow a bag of books. Here our little bag set up. There's 6 books and a laminated page in there to help parents question, interact with books in a positive way. We also have a parent collection now where parents can come in and borrow books that may be helping their child. These little picture books are books, what do I do if I'm feeling angry? What do I do if I'm feeling sad? There's other books in here like books about developing teenagers, or books about ADHD, or how I can help my child read. Lots of things like that they can borrow to help them out at home. And we loan books to the St. Ed's Playgroup. So connecting with parents in the community has been a really important part of building the library culture. The next one, making the library a pleasant place to be. I weeded. I have thrown out lots and lots of books to make space for new books, and just to get rid of the older books that were outdated and unappealing to the students. I've improved and updated collections, and I listen very hard to what the students voice. So if they come to me and say, I'm reading whatever series and I've read up to book 6 and we don't have book 6, I will go and do my level best to find book 6. And if they tell me about new series as well, I'm happy to look into them, and after checking budgets and appropriateness of the book or series, I'll get it. We introduced the First Nations. We have nearly 20% of our students who are of Indigenous descent. So it made sense to have a First Nations where we focus on those stories. The parent professional collections, of course, I've spoken about. I cleaned, I rearranged, we've made signs, decorations, we change our displays regularly, and we make our library as welcoming and accessible as possible to all facets of our school community. So, new books. This actually has been updated. We're probably around about 1,500, I would say, by now, and we've also weeded more books now. We would have weeded probably about 700 books by now, and I continue to work on that. These are some of the series that I've been focusing on. We've updated our Goosebumps, Ella Olivia, Ella Diaries, Dr. Seuss's, lots more Anne Doe, graphic novels. They are so popular these days. Some people say, oh, they're just comics. They're not just comics. They are a very valuable and different source of reading fodder for our students. And often we find students will read a series in graphic novel form and then move on to read the actual series. Wings of Fire is a great example of that. And another one is a history series that we have at the moment, I Survived, and they choose a real history event in time. And there's graphic novels about them, but we've got a full series. So it's things like 9/11, a gold rush, hurricane stories, the Holocaust, all sorts of history things that students want to learn about in graphic novel, and then they go on and read the series as well. Leading the teachers to value the library. So I would remind teachers in the early days that it was your turn. So please remember to be on time with your class, offering them resources when I can, asking teachers to follow up in chasing up overdues. They have more access to students and reminders than I do. Demanding in a very nice way that the students bring library bags. And I often show students what happens when books get spilt or damaged from not being in a library bag. I connect through the teachers by letting them know what I'm doing to support projects around the school, especially the AIP. Introduced Inspired Learners as a research and extension opportunity for our top readers to support teachers in their classroom. I'll speak about that more in a moment. And introduce the 1,000 Before School for a school readiness activity. So our Inspired Learners, we identify through benchmarking tests and aptitude and attitude in class, our top reading levels from grades 3, 4, and 5. I see those students, groups of around 15, once a week. We look at what they're doing in class, and then they develop individual thick questions around that. Along the way, I teach them how to take notes, how to note their sources, teach them how to do a bibliography. We talk about plagiarism. We write up information reports, and they get to do some sort of visual presentation to answer their own individualized questions. We reassess at the end of, and also their findings. We usually have a little expo where they present to their class and their parents regarding what their research, how they've spent their time. We reassess at the end of semester 1 and then rejig the groups. Maybe some students aren't going as well with their research, or it's not really their thing, they're not interested, or students have really improved their reading and they need an opportunity to read at higher than grade level as well. This has been very successful. I think the teachers and students can see how the library can support curriculum as well. Here we are, all working away in the library. These are mostly year 4 or year 5 photographs there. Year 5 in semester 1 did a hands-on visual presentation, which they absolutely loved. So some feedback. The parents are very happy that their child gets into this group. They love that they're getting opportunities to think and learn in a different way. Year 3 students, as you can see by their comments there, they're a little bit intimidated first, but then once they got into it and started working with me, they were pretty proud they were in the group, and also they realised that they get to learn a lot of different things as well, a different skill set, if you like. Year 4, they acknowledge that it is harder work and that I push them fairly fast. We've got limited time to get through a lot of work. But comments like this show that they're enjoying the challenge. Next time I want to find a really hard question for me. And the year 5 students, I actually started with them last year when they were in year 4, and they have been loving it, and they love the 3D projects that we did in semester 1 for their visual. I also started a second year 5 group this semester because so many of them had hit their benchmarks of 30 plus. And so I ran 2 groups. So the experienced group, which were these students, and then, if you like, a beginner group before, in the hour before that, to give more students an opportunity to learn the research skills. 1,000 before school, we had identified at St. Edward's that many of our students coming in for kindergarten were not experienced and had not been had the opportunity to be exposed to reading books. So therefore we are attempting to level them up to get them ready to access the kinder curriculum. Not just level them up, but also assist parents in how to engage with their preschoolers with a picture book. And of course, we're hoping, if these students are the oldest in the family, as this is working with them when they turn 4, if there's younger siblings, they're part of it as well. So the idea, this is a completely free service once you have enrolled your child at St. Edward's for the following academic year. We created these bags with 6 books in it and a question and a laminated sheet that looks like this. It tells you what's in your bag. And then for one of the books, there are just some very easy, simple little interactive questions that after you've read the book, you can engage your child with the story. And on the back of the card, I've got a few different sets of ways that you can grow a reader in your house. So talking about the environment, interacting with them with the books, just little clues that help parents engage with books with their student. This year actually got higher than that. So you can see we had 58 bags in total. We've only got about 6 or 8 bags left sitting on the shelf, which is just a nice little access, a little bumper there for parents to be able to access at any time. And so we've got about 50 families, I would say, who are involved with that this year. So that's 50 students coming into kindergarten who are getting an opportunity to be exposed more to print and books and engaging in stories. So we think that's a pretty good thing. Some feedback from parents. I love this one. The ladies in the office told me, this was the end of last year, when does the office open? Because the grandson can't wait to swap his bags of books, and he was coming in at least every week. They were worried they were overdoing it, and the grandmother said he'd be there every day if he could. This one's gorgeous. The little girl was starting kindergarten, and she'd taken to reading the books in the back seat of the car to a little brother on the way to wherever they were going. Favorite books. Kids are excited to get home and look at the books, like really lots of great feedback. So part of the joy of developing literacy is that students find reading a positive experience, and we're hoping we add to this as well. And then, of course, linking what we do in the library to the AIP. So these were the AIP projects that the library could quite seriously engage with and show that we are supporting the development of the school. So improve reading attainment. I might add, these are not my projects that I've created. The teachers, after working with me for a while, could see the connections, and they're the ones that came up with these projects and how we could go about supporting it. So this is where the library fits in. The expanding the school library resources, the Early Birds project, and establish the Inspired Learners program. So that's certainly all been done this year. Project 7, sharing their success. We've certainly done that. In particular, the library success, the students that support it, the students who are going into competitions and all of that sort of thing. And Project 9 was connecting with parents. So we've been working on that in workshops, the parent libraries, and helping establish the St. Edward's Playgroup Library as well. So they're all the ways. Now, that is the end of my presentation of the way that I went about building a library culture. Of course, every school is different. Every school has a different purpose for the library and what they're trying to achieve, different budgets, different staffing. But at St. Edward's, that's our story.